Welcome to Who Made This Mess? Raising Children and Reparenting Ourselves. Here we discuss the joys and challenges of parenting while trying to develop our own self-awareness and self-compassion. Raising children can be messy and so hard, but we believe that as we learn to embrace our own messiness and imperfection, we can learn to show up for our kids and raise a gentler generation.
Hi, welcome back. If this is your first time, I'm Angie.
I'm Shauna.
And we're so glad that you're with us today. We'll be talking about a very important topic, but one that often gets forgotten or devalued in our lives. So,
absolutely. We're going to talk about rest today. All the things that are involved in resting and why it's so hard to rest as a parent, what gets in the way, and how we can make rest a priority.
Right. Yes.
So rest is actually more than just sleep, right? A lot of times we think about sleep.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's anything that is relaxing and restorative for your body, but also for your mind, for your soul. I think rest really helps us to be able to have emotional resources. And it looks different for every person.
It does, yes. That's one thing that I had to learn, the fact that rest for me would look different than what other examples I may have seen. And right now, self-care is included with a rest, but self-care is very popular. But if you notice, it's different for everybody what that is. So it's important to be okay with what your rest looks like.
Yeah, and I think it takes time to reflect on that, right? Like for some people, it's really restful to sit down, to turn on the television or your phone and scroll for a while, just being able to zone out from the everyday worries and stress. But I think it can also be active. Rest can be going for a walk, right? Yeah. Like going outside, being in nature can be really restful.
I talk to the kids about like a shift of focus. What are you going to focus on that's different? Just focus on something else. And it can be restful, even if you're still doing something and busy and, like you said, active. But it's just a change of scenery, change of pace. I know there were years where I had a daycare in the home, and at home was not a restful place for me because that was also where work happened. And a lot of parents out there may be at home now as a transition from the pandemic, and finding rest might be different now, and you might find it challenging. So I do hope that some of our insight helps you as a listener today. One other thing is that I'm a stay-at-home mom, and I think that there had been several years where I had to get over the idea that rest, taking time to rest, didn't need to carry guilt with it because, at home, I think that there's perceptions from the world of what stay-at-home moms do. But now I think that the world is actually more kind to stay-at-home moms than stay-at-home moms are to themselves.
That's a great point.
And I found that to be true because people would ask like, oh, are you resting and this and that? And it was like, I didn't feel like I earned rest or I deserved rest because I was at home. And that was completely incorrect. It's just a different purpose that I had for my life was to be a stay-at-home mom. And growing up, that was something I desired to do. And it is work and it is important. And rest is a part of that.
Yeah. What do you think for you? What was it that when you didn't rest, the consequence of that was as a stay-at-home mom?
Being kinder to, especially when I had the daycare, just being kinder to my clients than my own family when it was the end of the day. And I would just, like the lack of rest showed, I would blow up over small things. I was mentally on overdrive and overstimulated by just whatever would overstimulate your mind throughout the day. And so then it was like the smallest thing would just set me off. And for me, emotions for me isn't, well, at the time, isn't always like, I'll say it isn't always, but it doesn't come out as like yelling and screaming and just being like aggressive throughout the environment of the home. It, for me, became just like a lot of tears, a lot of quiet crying that just would happen. And typically like that release of the tears like would be a release and like help me feel better. But in the moment it was just like a breakdown. And then like more guilt, more feeling bad happened, you know, because I blew up on my family. I love my family.
Yeah.
You know, why is this happening? And I'll be honest, in those years and in those moments, I wasn't taking the time to step back and say, why did this happen? Why did I react this way? Was it a lack of rest? You know, I wasn't going back and responsibly going through those things.
Just go back into functioning.
I look at it now and I can, you know, pinpoint, oh, this was what was happening. But that's what I hope our listeners can then kind of do self-inventory and see, how can I help in this area? What can be changed?
Yeah, I know we're going to talk a lot about parenting styles and gentle parenting on our podcast. And I think that is what is so key to having positive, gentle parenting is that self-awareness, right? Taking that time to pause and think about, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? And if you are having meltdowns, which we all have, I definitely have had my fair share of those in my parenting journey. But it's a sign, right? It sends us a message, and we need to listen to that. And a lot of times it's our body telling us, hey, I need some rest, right? Like, you have been functioning so at such a high level, right? Because when you become a parent, your brain is now responsible for not just you, but for a million little things, right? So, you become kind of hypervigilant in a way. And that is just biologically a survival mechanism, right? Because as a parent, you want your offspring to survive. As humans, we want them to thrive. And so we're always noticing and looking and taking in our environment. And that is just so much for our bodies to process.
And it's difficult to separate your productivity and your worth.
Absolutely.
We think of, I got this done, I got this done, I got this done, as I'm doing a good job.
Yeah.
And you may not realize it, but you're connecting the worth of what you have to offer your household as the productivity part. And it's not necessarily how God designed it. And one thing is, God designed rest. It's in the Bible, the Sabbath day. God rested. It's right there, right at the beginning of the Bible in Genesis. And it's then later said multiple times throughout the Bible that God rested. And I'm a firm believer, especially now, that if it's in the Bible, it's important. Why put it there if it's not? And so I do think that he modeled it for us. We're made for resting. And one thing that I think of, like, why do we think that needing rest is bad? And one thought that I came up with that may only be relevant to myself, but I did want to share, was the thought surrounding timeouts as a kid. Rest as an adult is a timeout from what you're doing. And there are many pros and cons to parenting with including timeouts. But what I want to talk about specifically is, as an adult, thinking that a timeout is like punishment, like you're doing a bad job.
Yeah.
If someone comes to me in like the heat of a meltdown and says, "Here, let me take this off your hands and help you," it can feel like a punishment.
Absolutely.
That I couldn't do it myself. Yeah. I couldn't get through this task. I failed today, and I need a timeout because I couldn't handle it. And so as a grown-up with those thoughts, that is like part of, I believe that for myself, it has been part of the reason why it's hard for me to accept help from others, because I am viewing it as a timeout in a way that's like, I need this because I'm like massively messing up right now. And that's not the case. And so, I know that we both can learn that accepting help from others is important. So
that is part of that rewiring process, right?
Yes.
Like that there is something in our society, maybe for some of us in our families, the message that rest is bad. We should always be doing something, always be accomplishing something. You know, your worth and your goodness as a person is based on what you can show other people.
Right.
And if you are, sitting on the couch, in quiet, that maybe, you should be doing the dishes or you really should be doing the laundry, or, there are toys all over the floor and you probably should pick those up and put those away, right? And, or you should be working, you should be, accomplishing that paper that you wanted to write, or, you should be reading a book that's going to give you more insight or knowledge. You should be working on yourself, right? And like those things are good, but they're not the basis of our worth as people. And whether or not your house is clean does not mean you are, it doesn't determine your goodness. It doesn't determine your worth. And I think actually, it doesn't make you a good mom if you never rest. I think it actually makes you less strong as a mom. I was just gonna say weak, but like as a parent, if we don't rest, we can't show up for our kids, for our families, for ourselves in the ways that we want to.
And it's so important to model that behavior for our kids, modeling rest as well. We want to model good work ethic, but we also want to model rest as well to our kids, because we want them to grow up knowing how to correctly rest for themselves. And one thing you mentioned was like, if I'm sitting and the dishes need done and there's toys all over the floor, I shouldn't be, it's wasted time, that kind of mindset. Well, one thing that works for me because of those kind of things is going to a room that is clean. So if the bedroom's a mess, I need to go to the living room where it's clean. If the kitchen's a mess, and the living room's a mess, I go up to the bedroom where it's clean, because I had trouble, and I still do. I have trouble sitting in the room that needs work and resting at the same time, because I'm looking at the things that are preventing me from rest mentally. And so that's so important, especially if like I can't get out of the house. One tool that I found helpful when the kids were, before they were school aged, was going to our library, because that was a change of environment for me and for them, but they had things to occupy them that wasn't my house and wasn't making a mess in my house. They ultimately like cleaned up before we left what they were playing with or reading, but it was a change of environment for me. And then I got to mentally rest because they were occupied. They were okay. And this also checked off the box of quality time out with my kids. And they had no idea that a trip to the library was a mommy break. And it really was. And, you just have to kind of learn those kind of things and see what might work for you. Do again, like I said, self-inventory before, but did this work? Did this help? Take 5 minutes to see, was this a good trip, or did this like make things worse because it took too long to actively get to the library. It was such a stress to get there and get home and pull them away from the books and toys there. Like, did this help or was this not a help?
Yeah, I think it's really valuable to figure out, what are restful activities you can do with your children there, because we don't always have the resources that we need to get rest without our children. I think that's important to prioritize and figure out how to get that rest. But, when you're with your child, what are activities that you find restful? When my child was really little, bath time was a stressful time for me. But as she's gotten older and more secure, I find that her bath time can be very relaxing for me because she's really happy. She's pretty independent as far as like playing with her toys when she's in the bath. And I'm sitting right there with her. But I can take that time to just sit and be. Sometimes it's about being mindful about like what she's doing, and that can be relaxing for me. Sometimes I'm kind of off in my own little world and I know she's safe and I'm right there with her, but I can just take that time to be still. And so like finding those little things, whatever that might look like for you, sometimes it's even like putting on good music while we're playing or eating.
I like music when I'm cleaning.
Yeah.
In the movie Snow White, she whistles while she works. And the day that I realized that music while I'm cleaning helps so much, I'm like, Snow White was onto something with that whistling. Now I don't whistle. My husband doesn't really care for my whistling, but I can whistle. But
whistling is one of my pet peeves.
But so I don't whistle, but I do put on music, and it really helps. And one thing that I'm noticing is like good expectations for yourself. In all areas. If I have a young child, the expectation of me having one day a week to have just me time for the entire day is not a real expectation. And then the same thing with doing tasks. If my whole house needs work, my expectation of I'm going to do my whole house on Monday is not a real expectation. It's just setting me up for those failure-like feelings. And instead take it room by room, one day at a time, and stuff like that. So
yeah, breaking down tasks and like adjusting those expectations, I think, is really important. I know I really had to learn the hard way, and I would say I'm still learning about rest. Yeah. But like that tie to my self-worth, when I was pregnant, the first like half of my pregnancy, I could not function, right? It like took everything that I had to just get myself to my in-home office to see clients. And I poured out all of my energy into that. And then I had to return to the couch, and I was, really nauseous and sick and vomiting a lot and getting migraines a lot. But I just felt so awful that I would be spending the whole day, resting. It wasn't really restful because I was so sick, and I was mostly just trying to like dissociate from the state of being so sick. But not being productive took such a toll on me, because I think for so long I learned, when I was a really little kid, okay, do well in school, get all these things done, be an overachiever, and you're going to get praise from people, and they're going to tell you how great you are, and it's going to make you feel really good, right? And so then to not be able to function and do that, it really messes with your view of yourself as a person.
And when you said about the praise part, I think that I'm similar in that way. The 5 love languages, I think, really come into play when you think of your value. And so words of affirmation. And as moms, as parents, we're not going to get a word of affirmation every time we make the same lunch for the week for our child. But we have to know, and that's where we have to work on our own relationship with the Lord, with our self-value, and know that what we're doing is important, even if the child doesn't want PB&J that day.
Yeah.
We made it, we gave it with love, and there it is, and we may not have given it with love that day. It might have been like, here, eat this, you need to eat this because all you've had was candy, so it's just, we have to learn that, yes, words of affirmation from others mean so much, but I for myself had to learn that couldn't be my goal. That couldn't be what I was working towards. I can use it as encouragement. It certainly is important, but making sure that I'm getting that value and confidence from God for the work that I do.
Mm-hmm. And being able to know in yourself that rest is valuable, right? You mentioned how it's in the Bible, right?
Yes.
That God rested. If God does it, hey, maybe we should do it too, right? It's okay for us to rest too then. And I love Brene Brown. I love her work. And she has this quote that I think is helpful when we're thinking about living a fulfilling life, a satisfying life. She says, if we want to live a wholehearted life, we have to become intentional about cultivating rest and play. And we must work to let go of exhaustion as a status symbol and productivity as self-worth, right? We've become so used to saying oh, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so busy, right? And that's the new version of oh, I'm fine, right? And we need to start letting go of that. And we need to start really embracing rest and play to give us, that satisfaction in life. That's important.
Right. And it's okay to be tired just because you're tired. You don't have to have, I think when I do say that I'm tired, I feel like I have to back it up with reasons, valid reasons to this person why I would be tired. And life is tiring in itself, but I fully agree with that. One verse I really like that relates to rest is in Matthew 11, 28 through 30, it says, come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And it's so important to just cast those times of heaviness to the Lord, and his rest is so restorative. And when it says, one thing that I had to learn was the yoke. When the Bible said yoke, I used to think that meant the yolk of an egg. I really didn't understand it, but it has to do with the animal pulling the weight for a farm, and well, you know this from your experience, and so it goes over, and it's this weight right here that then is what is that animal is pulling, and so he's taking that burden that will feel like that heavy weight on us, and his rest is like nothing else. I read a study, and experts said that, back to the timeout example, a good timeout ratio would be the age of the child to be every minute for her age of the child. And so it was like, okay, if a 5-year-old needs a timeout, it would be 5 minutes long. And at first I'm thinking like, oh, wow, that's so short. As a parent, I feel like I left my kid in the timeout chair for much longer than that. Probably because I needed the break too. But but then I thought about it. I was like, okay, I'm 35 years old. Yeah, 35-minute break in the day.
Would be great.
At first I would be like, that's not enough. But then I'm like, that would be great. That would be perfect. And that probably would be enough. So I don't know if that's what God would say, but that's what experts advise. And so I think I'm going to use that one and say, okay, if I feel like I'm really overwhelmed, let me make sure that I set aside 35 minutes and try to do something else.
Taking that time to self-regulate and to find your calm, to find your center. And it does kind of take some planning, thinking ahead sometimes, because if we wait until we're in the moment where we need it, that half an hour might not be effective enough. Right. But if we're kind of thinking about it in our day, like when can I take that time to rest? What supports do I need to make that? Like, you know, for me, I need to talk to my husband sometimes to be like, okay, I really need to make sure I get a break. You know, when can you be solely in charge and I can kind of go take care of myself, and vice versa. He needs to let me know when he needs a break so that he can rest, so that he can take care of himself, so that he can, you know, be happier and more present in our family when he is there. And so, planning that out, I think, can be really helpful. Some people are able to wake up early in the morning and they have their like nice quiet time. That's not me.
My mind turns on as soon as I wake up with all the tasks of the day. And so for me, mine is at night. And sometimes it's doing a quick workout. A lot of the times it's not. And so, but I've said to you before that it's a TV show, but it's not, for me, I have to have something that's not stimulating. It just has to be something that I already know the outcome. So typically it's the Friends sitcom. And so I watch that. I already know what's going to happen. I have the show basically memorized. And so, but that's relaxing for me, just listening to an episode of that. And, it's the end of my day, shutdown time, you know. One thing you said about like morning versus other times in the day, I read a book called At Your Best by Carrie Newhoff, and I really like it. So if you're listening and are looking for a good book, it's a very good book to read. And he comes from the standpoint of career, but I found it very helpful as a parent. He was talking about
parenting is the most important job that we'll ever have. So it all applies. It just looks a little different.
Right. And so he was talking about finding those, being honest with yourself about what the best time of day is. What is your best time of the day? And so, and then also what you need to do is protect that time. And so for him, he might have been talking about, you can use it for different things, but like the productivity part. And so if his best time was from 9 to 11 every morning for productivity, he protected that time. So he would not schedule anything during that time. So that's something that I took on as far as both productivity and then also in my being intentional for rest. It was like, at this time of day, this is when I need to rest, and I'm not going to schedule anything in that time. And for me, for now, it's probably going to be some kind of 35-minute window, but I'm not going to schedule a breakfast. I may turn my phone on Do Not Disturb for that 35 minutes, which sometimes can be so hard. The phone is a big part of not properly resting.
That's something I really need to be working on.
So, you know, if it is that time at night after my kids go to bed at 8, then 8 to 8:30 or 8:30 to 9, I need to not do anything work related or something like that. So just protecting that time, not scheduling anything for that time. And sometimes it doesn't happen. So if it doesn't happen and you have to have something at that time, be kind to yourself, but replace that time somewhere else in your day. Don't skip it.
Yeah, because you'll pay the price for it.
Yeah.
And I definitely have paid the price for it in terms of just like burnout, or I get chronic migraines. And so when I push too hard, my body says, no. You will now spend the day in bed and be miserable. So that's my time out.
Yes, right. You will be forced to make that time out.
Yeah. And so I think sometimes it's really about being able to set boundaries and say no.
Yeah.
You might not always be able to set boundaries and say no with your kids because you have to take responsibility for them. So you can't be like, I'm going to skip giving you dinner tonight. You can do cereal for dinner though.
Yeah.
You can like take the easy way out. And I think that's totally fine. But resting might take saying no to things that are good. Like it might be saying no to your cousin's kid's birthday party because that would take your whole Saturday and you really need some downtime.
Yeah.
With the holidays, being able to say no or like set boundaries around how long you might visit with a family member.
Yeah.
Those things are important in order to carve out time for rest. Like,
Yeah.
Not letting other people have control over our own schedules, our family schedules.
Right. That's so important. And you do mention holidays because I think that as people in the workforce, they do look forward to that break, and then it goes by so quickly because their schedule is packed with other things, with visits and all that. Not to say they're not enjoyable, like you said, like it's okay to say no to good things. One thing that I had to be okay with was being okay with others not understanding my rest needs, and so saying no. Without, again, having to give a valid reason for saying no. I think that's something that I felt the pressure of, especially as a stay-at-home mom. It was like, well, why can't you come? You have all the time in the world, why can't you come? And it's like, well, no, because I haven't had a good meal with my family the past 2 nights. So tonight I need to make sure that I do this, or something like that. And so just not necessarily having to explain your reason for no as well. And I've gotten better at that. I will say that has taken some practice. Scheduling, if it takes scheduling it in your phone, I'm big on my phone calendar being a helpful tool for me. And so if I have something and if I don't have something, it's okay. My answer is no, because I need to take an hour nap at that time. And that's important to me. But I don't need to tell that person that. I just need to say, no, I'm unavailable. I'm so sorry.
Absolutely. We don't always have to give that in-depth explanation. And it is important to carve it out, to even write it down, right? To like make an appointment with yourself for rest.
And it takes practice. It does. But it will get easier, and we hope that that's encouraging to you as a listener.
Absolutely. Take time to rest. If you can figure out what is restful to you, what are those things? Is it something that's creative? Is it something that is spiritual? Is it something that is physical? Is it creating a time to just hide in your closet and not hear anything or see anything?
Yeah, I think we're both big on silence right now, like silent moments, still moments.
So rare, especially with a toddler who is into everything. And sometimes it's okay that I'm just going to let her watch some TV. I'm just going to put a show on. Like to take that burden off of myself, because you're going to show up better for the people that you love, and you're going to show up better for yourself. You are worth rest. So figure out, what do you need? How can you ask for the support to make time for rest in your life so that you can get those benefits?
Yep. And we'd love for you to let us know. Thank you for listening today. Please share with us what your restful tips are. We would love to hear some. We're always learning, as we said, and so we would really enjoy you being part of that discussion. If you are a first-time listener, thank you for listening. Please take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel so that you can keep up with our episodes as they become available to you. And as always, if you have any questions for us unrelated to the topic of rest, but for another topic, or you'd like to hear from Shauna and I, definitely give us a message. You can contact us at whomadethismesspod@gmail.com. And you can also find us on Instagram at whomadethismesspodcast.
And Angie, where can they find you? And I'll tell them where they can find me.
You can find me on Instagram at the Mix Up Marriage Podcast or at Robinson Right Now.
Awesome. And you can find me at The Nerdy Nurturer. And we're really glad that you joined us today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.